All right, let's talk about the combine. We sort of touched on that with some of the players who played in the Super Bowl. Let's start with the snubs, because there are a few names on this list that we saw in Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl that are not going to the combine. And first, before I mention the names, why don't you explain to me how this list is put together? Because there's input from the 32 NFL teams. And what are you thinking if you're a general manager or director of college scouting and there's a guy that had a good run at one of these all-star games that's now not on the combine list?
Yeah, most of the time, Jeff Foster puts together a list with the two combine services to initially start, the Blesto and the National. So those two come together. Jeff actually runs the National Combine. They come up with the original list of seniors. They adjust that list as the season progresses. There will be some general managers that may ask, hey, can we get this guy in? We can get this guy in. But what happens is you only have X amount of spots. You can't bring in 500 guys. It's always around that 330 mark, I believe.
319 this year.
Yeah. And what you have to do is save spots for the juniors coming out. So there's whatever 50, 60, whatever amount of juniors come out every year. You have to save a certain amount of spot for them as well, because a lot of times there's no work been done on them. There've been tape done on them. But those are the guys that you want to get in front of at the combine. And as a general manager, we always made the point that the Senior Bowl, the East-West, all these all-star games where the seniors are going to show up, let's get as much work as we can get done there with the interview process, the testing, everything we can do. So when we get to the combine, we haven't got in front of those juniors at all. So we can focus a lot of our time on the testing, on the interview process with the juniors that are eligible to come out in the draft.
Okay, so let's go over the snubs quickly. And four of the names that I have on this list were at the Senior Bowl. Aubrey Miller out of Jackson State, he's a linebacker. Carl Brooks, the defensive lineman, who lines up just about everywhere along the defensive line at about 290, played a lot outside at Bowling Green. Our favorite guy, I think, that showed it was a late invite, Marte Mapu, the safety / linebacker from Sacramento State. I think he only practiced one day and may have suffered an injury, but that one day left a mark for sure. And then finally, Keidron Smith, the cornerback out of Kentucky, also late ad, who certainly had a good week, didn't do anything to make you think otherwise. Two of the names I have on the list, Rick, are Kobe Turner, the defensive lineman at Wake Forest, and of course, Xavier Valade, the running back at Arizona State. I haven't watched him yet. He went to the Shrine game and impressed a lot of people. And you said you heard recently that he's a guy to watch as well.
Yeah, I threw tape on him before we got on this podcast because we're going to have to talk about him. So he had a very big game against UCLA. When I watched him, he's a bigger back, 6 foot. I believe he's going to be over 200 pounds. He's a little bit of an upright runner, but he has very good inline vision. He's not Pacheco, but he's Pacheco-like as far as one cut and get up the field. What I'd like to see a little better from him is lower his pads on contact, although he does seem to go forward once the initial hit is made on him. He had very good hands out of the backfield. He definitely needs a lot of work in pass protection. But there's going to be, and Ryan, I know you've seen a lot of these, I think it's going to be a very deep running back class. I'm talking about, the kid, everybody knows Gibbs, everybody knows Robinson, some of the runners that were down at the Senior Bowl. But when you get into Saturday, guys like these, especially if they have a very good pro day, someone's going to like them well enough that those guys do end up getting drafted at some point on Saturday. But I think this is a very deep running back class that you're going to get value not only on Thursday night, if you do take one on Thursday night, but for sure Friday and Saturday, there's value all over the place on runners.
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, Debo's got the list of invites that the running back position. Your guy, Eric Gray, my guy, Evan Hull. I think he came around on Evan Hull as the week went on in Mobile.
No, I didn't, but that's fine. Go ahead.
He had a good week. Tyjae Spears, who's going to be probably a day 2 guy if injuries are no problem. Sir Roderick Thompson was a late ad, and he ran hard later in the week from Texas Tech and had a good game as well. And let me talk about 2 guys that, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I think they're top 100, top 125 guys. Carl Brooks, the defensive line out of Bowling Green, and Marte Mapu, the safety / linebacker out of Sacramento State. Now, maybe the thing with Mapu is you don't know where you play him. He's undersized for linebacker, not fast enough for safety. He didn't look slow on tape when he played primarily safety, and they had him lined up at slot at times at Sacramento State. And Carl Brooks was an absolute game wrecker wherever they lined him up. I'm confused why they did not make the cut because, this is an ongoing process. And would you be surprised if these guys are drafted, let's say late round 4 or higher?
Yeah, I think both these guys, especially Brooks from Bowling Green. And the reason I say that is because he really had a very good Senior Bowl week, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They played him standing. He's almost 300 pounds. They played him standing up from a 2-point on the edge. Everybody knows that that's not going to be what he's going to do at the NFL. So they reduced him down inside to a 3 technique or defensive tackle. And I thought he had no concerns at all or no issues making that transition during the Senior Bowl week. And you've seen him improve every day. And you've seen him not only make some plays in the run game, but he also has that quick first step twitch that everybody's looking for as a pass rusher. He had a natural feel working through edges of blockers, especially over the guards. And I think out of that list, he's the guy that may sneak in on Friday. Now, the biggest thing that teams will complain about is he's not invited to the combine. He had a good season. He put a, let's say, cherry on top of his season by performing as well as he did down at the Senior Bowl. But if you're going to want to work him out, then everybody's going to have to head out to Bowling Green, Ohio, which is not an easy place to get to. I know you fly into Toledo or Detroit and drive down.
And that's frustrating if you have a million things to do this time of year, right?
Well, the great thing about the combine is you have all the decision makers there, but all the decision makers can't be at every pro day. So I'll be kind of curious to see if he ties his pro day close to Ohio State pro day.
Yeah.
A lot of these kids at the smaller schools will either do it the day before or the day after, since there'll be a ton of people like there always is at Ohio State. And then a lot of people, if they have their pro day right the day before or day after Ohio State, I wouldn't be surprised that he'd get a pretty big turnout with everybody jumping in a car and heading to Bowling Green, Ohio.